Cool, cool. Okay, hello everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to UBC Product Management Club first event, Discover Product Management. We want to make sure that this event is as interactive as possible, so we encourage that all of you switch on your cameras so we can see your beautiful faces. However, the session will be recorded, so if you feel uncomfortable being recorded, you don't have to do so. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that UBC Product Management Club is based at University of British Columbia, and we are gathered today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam First Nation people. If you would like to learn more about the native land, please visit nativeland.ca. We will be sending a link in the chat box below. So yeah, anyway, we're so excited for you to be here today, possibly from all around the world. So give us.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Yen.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but my name is Yen. I will be your co-host tonight along with Andy, who will be moderating the panel discussion later. Without further ado, here is our agenda tonight. Ratchet and Rithik will be doing a quick introduction of our club, who we are, and give a team introduction. We will then be doing a panelist discussion and begin discovering product management with our amazing speakers here, Lena, Derek, Cleo, and Alex. Thank you for being here today. For the second half of the event, we will then open up the floor to Q&A through Slido for the first 15 minutes. The link will be in the chat, and then transition into audio style Q&A. So for that, please be sure to use the raise hand function. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Ratchet and Rithik for our club introduction.
Thank you, Yen. Can everyone hear me all right? Just
yeah.
Thumbs up. Awesome. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our first event, Discover Product Management. We're super excited to see the support that we have gotten, given that we've just got started a couple of months ago to build out this awesome product community at UBC. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background of our story and how we started this club. So I'll start a little bit about that. So basically, when I was learning about the PM role and preparing for interviews and whatnot, I was thrown into this whole world of product management. And coming from a software engineering background, I found it quite overwhelming. I wished I kind of had this community on campus where I could learn from people, learn from my peers, as well as learn from PMs in industry. And just to fill that gap, this summer I got together with a friend and Ritwik, and we started this community off. And I'm super excited to say that we have got tremendous amount of support from you guys, and I'm glad to see so much interest in product. So our goal is to kind of be a place where UBC students interested in this field can learn more about the PM role together, grow their product network at UBC and beyond. And we achieve this in 3 ways. One of them is through speaker events like these, where you can learn from these amazing speakers about what it is like to be a PM in industry and learn about their journey. And I found that one of the best ways to kind of learn about PM is by talking to people. And by doing this at scale, we hope to give you those opportunities more easier. And then we also aim to support you guys by learning from each other through our online Slack community. So if you guys haven't joined yet, feel free to join. We're a bunch of people interested in product, and we have a bunch of initiatives that are getting started there, as well as applying these skills that you learn in these speaker events through PM skill related workshops, so you can kind of build that portfolio of yours. And finally, I guess the main thing is to kind of meet each other, form these meaningful connections with PMs based locally as well as beyond. So yeah, thank you everyone for the support. And again, I wanted to extend a big thanks to my team that we have built up really quickly and their hard work to make all this possible. So I'll just give everyone on the team a chance to introduce myself. I'll pass it on to Rithik first, and then we'll go around the room. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachit. Yeah, everybody, just once again, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. This is our first event, and we're super, super excited to have all of you. I just want to reiterate everything that Rachit said. And, we as a team, the UBC PM Club as a team, we truly believe that we've really got something here because of how much traction we've also gained from all of you, the interest that all of you have shown. And yeah, we're just super excited to have all of you, and we hope this is a great event that you all enjoy. I'll pass it on to Yen.
I think you're on mute, Yen.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. So I'll pass it on to Andy so she can introduce the panelist speakers.
Yeah. So I'm Andy. Will be one of your co-hosts for tonight. A little bit about me. I am a fifth-year degree engineering student. I found out about PM after a couple of software internships, and I think I'll just pass it off to Rebecca. And I think we'll hold off on the speech for a bit. Could you go back to the previous slide, and then after we do a round, we will introduce speakers. Rebecca, take it away.
Sure. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I am the External Partnership Director and Marketing Director for UBC PMC. So yeah, it's so great to see everyone here and the great response that we've gotten for our first event. And so yeah, thanks everyone. I suppose I need to pass it off to someone. Okay, I'll pass it off to Sharon. How about you go next?
Yeah, hi. So I am a senior COG student. I'm one of the designers for the team, and I'm really excited to get the event started.
Hey guys, I am the second designer with UBC PMC. I'm kind of learning about this world as well, so this is all new to me. I'm very excited to hear from everyone.
All right, awesome. Let's get this started. So we'll start with introductions for our speakers. Yen, do you mind? Yeah, awesome. And yeah, we can start off with Cleo, and then we'll just go around the table.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Cleo. I am a PM at Microsoft, as the slide says. So I'm from Vancouver, BC originally, and I actually studied computer science at UBC. So I studied computer science as well as media studies and did a couple of software engineering internships during my degree. I graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science. And then after that, I moved to Seattle to start my job at Microsoft. And so today I'm a PM at Microsoft working on marketing technology for the Microsoft Digital Store.
Awesome. I'll go next because I think that's me over there to the right. So my name is Alex. I'm a Google PM right now. And before at Google, I used to do mobile games, mobile products, online and offline startups and consulting. And I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about product management and business, and also try to help out folks that are interested in learning about product management or getting into the product management field. I think it's going to be a really, really good opportunity in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so definitely want to share as much information about the reality and how to get in and all that stuff as I can. So happy to be here.
Great. Going in that order. So my name is Derek, and I'm currently VP of Product Management at SAP, dealing with augmented BI, which is helping people make better decisions in the business world. I've been in product management for a long time, and been old enough that back in the day when I first got into it, not many people were around. It's a fairly new field. So I've worked in different companies of various sizes and different industries, but always in the same areas of understanding product.
Hi, I'm Lena. So I went to UBC as well. I studied economics, graduated in 2013. I've been in product management for about 3.5 years. So I first started in product management while I was working in a startup-like team in a large fintech organization. Then I led an innovation team at a customer experience management company. Then I currently am doing some consulting back at the old financial tech organization while I do some personal projects on the side. This year, I'm basically seeing whether my skills in product management can be used to do entrepreneurial things. So I recently wrote as well a book called The Making of Product Managers, where I interviewed 20 product managers about how they got into product, wrote long form stories, and you guys get to have a little discount off the book today. So super excited for the panel today. Thanks to all the organizers.
Awesome. And all those links will be sent in the Zoom chat below if you want to check them out. Cool. So we will just jump right in to the panel. So just like a quick recap of how this is going to go down. We're going to ask a couple of questions for the panelists. And then after that, we'll take in questions from the audience. We'll start off with Slido, which was the link you saw before. I think that's also in the Zoom chat too. And then we'll go on to Zoom Q&A, which will take questions from the audience. We encourage you to turn on your cameras. We'll use the raise hand functions, just as I'm sure you're all aware of in class. And yeah, we'll just get started right away.
Also, before we move on, just wanted to let everyone know that Alex has an amazing YouTube channel, and we have kind of linked all those things down below if you're interested in more resources about PM.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll just jump right in then. I know that when I started looking into PM, I found a lot of different definitions depending where I looked online, who I talked to, what companies they've kind of worked at. So I guess my first question for our panelists is, what's your definition of a PM? And like, can you give us a couple examples of what you do in your day-to-day activities? And I guess we can start off with Cleo.
Sure, yeah, I could start off. So my definition of a PM, so I guess I'll preface this by saying, so my title at Microsoft is Program Manager, but Microsoft kind of has this blanket title for all PMs, whether it be program managers, product managers, or project managers. But the way I'll describe it, I'll refer to it kind of how I define the product manager role. So I see the PM role as being very interdisciplinary. But for starters, I think that product manager is responsible for determining the why behind a product being built. So having prior experience as an engineer, I think as an engineer, you're responsible for the how to be able to implement something and how you build it. But a product manager is really responsible for determining what value that product is bringing and what problem it's solving. So I think that entails many different skills. For one, being able to identify problems and coming up with various solutions how to solve it. I think a product manager is also a visionary in a sense where if they do come up with a solution, they have to be able to pitch that to people and convince people that their solution is going to solve their problems. There are many, many things I think the PM role entails. I also believe that PMs are kind of the glue between many different groups. So you might be the main point of contact between engineering, between design, business, customers, and you are kind of expected to be that person that can be the voice of everyone amongst all teams. So that's kind of just one layer of it. I'm sure all the PMs will all have very different answers, and I find that PM, your role really depends on the product you're building, the type of project, and so there's many, many flavors of the PM role. But so far, what I've experienced, that is my definition of it. And then the second question was what you do in the day-to-day, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so I would say a very common stereotype of the PM's day-to-day is to be in meetings all day, especially now that we're all remote. I find my days are back-to-back with calls. So that can be calls with engineering, where you're participating in a lot of engineering rituals, such as, sprint planning, daily stand-ups, design reviews, those kinds of more technical discussions. And then you'll also have a lot of meetings with your stakeholders where you're defining what the business needs and understanding their problems. Also talking with customers or design teams. So you'll have, again, because you are the glue between so many teams, you end up communicating with them, and that ends up being a large part of your job. But aside from all the meetings, you will also have your own work to do in your own time. So that can be answering emails and messages. You can also be working on lots of different kinds of documentation. So I find that the day-to-day really depends on the stage of the project, what kind of product you're building, the kind of teams you're working with. And so that's partly why I find the job really exciting, because your day-to-day is never quite the same.
Awesome. Great answer. Thanks, Cleo. A lot of detail. I love that. Yeah, that's also something I found too when kind of talking to, like, I know that Microsoft kind of has a different program. Let's hear from some of our other panelists.
Sure, I can jump in. Lena here. So I'll start with my definition of PM, and then I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about the different PM roles that I've been in, because every one of them has been completely different, which proves that it's very different depending on the company, depending on the type of company, the type of product, the stage, and stuff like that, the stage of the product. So first, the way I like to think about PM is really the connector between the customers, the technology, which is the software developers typically, and the business, which is the stakeholders. The customer technically also is a stakeholder, but in terms of the business, I mean kind of the people in the company, the different departments within the company and such. So I think the PM basically is responsible for the success of the product, and they will do whatever it takes to make sure that that product succeeds. The interesting thing about being a product manager is that you basically have to lead by influence because you don't have the authority over the people that you're either working with or managing. So the software engineers don't report to you. They don't have to listen to you at all. And sometimes they won't. The customers, they don't report to you. The stakeholders certainly don't report to you. The CEO does not report to you. So it's really challenging because you have to basically convince all these different people that your plan is the right one and essentially kind of herd them into the right plan, right? And so they don't have to essentially pay attention to you, follow what you're saying, but you have to convince them with influence as opposed to authority. I also think the product manager is in charge of kind of evangelizing the product. You have to be the one that really believes in it so you can convince the customers, the business, and everyone that, we should be working on this product type of thing. I also do think that good product managers are very entrepreneurial. So I think there's so many different opportunities for your product, and sometimes you really have to be able to take a risk and experiment, and that's where entrepreneurial spirit really comes in my opinion. So I think that kind of is what makes a really good product manager, someone who's willing to actually take that risk and, go along with their vision and take the whole company along on that journey, right? So in terms of the day-to-day, so my first job as a product manager was probably a little more technical than most product managers. So I was actually thrown into the deep end. And so I had to do some coding, which I'd never done before. But again, as the product manager, you will do whatever it takes for the success of the product. So I was on production support for 2 years. I spent a lot of Friday nights alone, just testing production because there's literally no one else. We were in a startup department within the organization. So it was literally do whatever it takes. But some of the more classic product management kind of activities that I was doing was meeting with customers, understanding what their needs are, really understanding the why, like Cleo said. There's a lot of also kind of providing status updates and updates to your plan to different stakeholders in the organization. Then there's the whole piece with the developers where I was kind of guiding the developers to build new features, making sure that they understood what needed to be done, sitting in technical discussions. I think that's an important piece as well, actually being willing to sit in a room with the developers while they whiteboard. And maybe you don't understand every single detail of the technical conversations that they're having, but taking an interest and actually having that conversation with them builds a lot of trust. And you really need that trust because the software engineers are the ones that are going to bail you out when you're in a situation. So they're super important. So in the first job, I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff, also removing any impediments, whether it's for developers or BAs, QAs, project managers. So essentially, Cleo took the words out of my mouth. Product managers really are the glue. So you essentially, you're the connector between everyone, and you have to make sure that everything is kind of functioning properly. So we were actually kind of growing a new web application. So there was anything from PM processes that we needed to implement, like how are we going to use Jira? How are we going to keep everyone up to date? How are we going to live within this organization that's probably, got its own processes, but our product is moving a lot faster? Like how do we actually implement the processes that are going to let us move fast, but also stay within kind of the audit guidelines of the company? So that was kind of my first experience. The second experience was when I was running an innovation lab. So that was also completely different. So I actually didn't have one product that I managed, but I was on a newly formed innovation team where we were in charge of essentially coming up with a framework to validate new market opportunities. So it was really on the early discovery side. So we went out and talked to customers. I think we talked to about 50 customers over 3 months. And essentially, it was a lot more entrepreneurial in that we were essentially finding a new opportunity. And, we'd write a product brief. We did some rapid prototyping. We did some design sprints, which are very short kind of sprints that are aimed at solving one problem with customers usually. So that was very different. And then now my last kind of current experience that I'm in, where I'm doing kind of consulting, is I'm basically supporting the product team with my expertise, especially because I used to work at that company. So I used to be the product manager there. So now I've kind of come back and I'm helping making sure that things can kind of scale properly. So there I'm doing a lot of a lot of the similar things that I was doing before, but probably a bigger focus on PM processes and how can we continue to grow the product and still deliver to our customers, make sure that the developers know what they're doing, and just, you know, making sure that all the processes are in line with what the product needs to be successful. So very, very different, you know, worked with different people, different stakeholders, different teams, different customers. But one thing that's the same for all of them is the people that I work with don't report to me, and every day is a completely new day with different tasks. So it's kind of my summary there.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds like pretty different from the typical PM role that you would generally hear about. I'm curious as to what Derek's answer is for his definition of a PM role, because I know he's been in the field for a very long time. In order to, I guess, almost contrast that. So let's go, Derek, and then we can finish up with Alex.
Sure, no problem. So the overall part, I guess, I mean, just building off what I've already said, is go to the outcome. So when I look at a product manager, I'll say, okay, tell me what you want to actually build next. Tell me why, and why is it now? Because the big part is you can justify anything as a why. But why is it now means that you understand the strategy, you understand the data behind it, you validated it, and you know it's the next most important thing for the customer and the company. And so when I look at product management, I measure on those type of outcomes. And there's more, of course, than you broaden it to go to market, looking at the strategy side and so forth. But typically when you get into product management, you're doing more tactical. So you're going to be getting more involved with a certain product or feature and decomposing requirements with your team, executing on it that way. For myself, looking around, like what have I done in my day-to-day product management? My day-to-day as a VP, of course, is very different than a day-to-day as a product manager. So I'll be doing much more people management, operation strategy, but I'll bring it back to when I was much more of a product manager. And in that sense, I do a little strategy, of course, keep my head up, what's the market going on, directions, and then I'd be a lot with the heads down, of course, working with the design engineering teams, the actual go-to-market side too, and taking those things and those big pictures, big boulders, decomposing them, working at Three Amigos, bringing up the agile teams, going through, following through, reviewing, looking at the metrics, you know, guiding and changing, and keep building forward. So product management is a mixture. The title is a little bit abused in many places, but at the end of the day, if you're not the one driving that direction of that product, then I would say that you're not a product manager. But most people who are doing it really well know the value they're delivering, know who they're solving it for, what that root problem is, they can see the big picture and bring it down to real details to see it implemented.
I like that a lot. So much said. I'm not sure if I should really add anything. I think that was really awesome. Cleo, Lena, Derek, I really like to hear your perspective on it. I couldn't agree more. I think it's the why, it's the what. You know, I wrote like the way Derek phrased it is like, why do we need to do this? Why now? And I would just add like, why us? You know, there's another question like, why should
opportunity assessment? Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to rehash what everyone said because that's basically it. I think we're basically done with the session, but I would just add maybe the prioritizer also. It's another aspect where sometimes you got to say the stuff not to do. And that also changes on your career and changes on the type of company you work at. You know, and I think we kind of alluded to this as Derek's a VP. If you're starting out as a product manager, maybe you're working for a startup as a product manager, it's going to be completely different things. And I actually have, because I think there was, in the beginning we started talking about, I started taking notes on what Cleo said, and then I continued, and then I lost track. It's just too much. So we'll just get to it in Q&A, but I want to say that I have a video on product, project, and program manager disambiguation. That's a common thing. So check that out, not now, much later. And then in terms of like the day-to-day, I think, yep, meetings, nonstop meetings. And I think the higher you rise on the like a typical career, or if you're in a startup, the further along you are in the startup stage, the more you have to defend that time, because that time will just get eaten right up. And if you don't actually take time to think about the why and the strategy aspect of it, you're going to find yourself doing stuff that's just not as meaningful. And that's another key aspect of the product manager's job, because at the end of the day, it's about execution. But what can you deliver at the end of the day? What's your impact? What did you do? What changed because you were there? And I think the product manager is perceived as that person more than anybody else, because of course nothing will happen if the engineers don't build it, the salespeople don't sell it, etc. But a product manager is this like, okay, it's exactly like Derek said. It's like, what did you do? What did you deliver? What did you execute on? So that's what I would say. I think my days are a lot of meetings, a lot of fighting about how to get out of certain meetings, meaning strategically, not just rudely leaving, but I mean, like, how do you make it so that you align folks? How do you talk about stuff that you can talk to outside of meetings, in emails and vice versa? How do you come up with strategy? How do you move strategy forward when you constantly interrupt it? And it's just like you have to set aside little time so you can think to yourself. Then you've got to align with the salespeople. You got to align with the engineers. You got to align with your nearby organizations. Again, I'm talking about like a big company. If you're at a startup, usually the PM will just do everything. You might have to code. You'll do whatever is necessary in a startup just to ship the product, solve the problems. You're going to solve the biggest problems. Which thing? Startups is like you're the firefighter all the time, and also you're the person building the processes that are going to stop the fires from happening in the future. In a big company, you're just a bridge builder. You got to know everybody. Everybody's got to know you in all departments, organizations that have some impact. So that's kind of what I would add.
Awesome. Thanks for the answer. Our next question is actually about challenges. And I know that Lena kind of touched up upon this. Alex also touched up upon this too. Lena mentioned dealing with influence and how that's difficult. That's something that I've heard from just initial PM research, as well as dealing with a lot of ambiguity. Alex talked about really defending your time, but I really want to boil it down to something more concrete. And so this next question is, what's the hardest challenge you faced so far as a PM? And I guess we could also start with Lena.
Hardest challenge. Probably the hardest challenge for me was getting used to working with software engineers, just because I was super new to tech. So when I first started, I honestly didn't even know what a server was, which is really embarrassing. But, I didn't know what tech debt meant. Like, they were talking about the DOM, which is, I still don't really understand what the DOM is, but there were all this technical jargon, and, these developers, it's intimidating because they are supposed to now start listening to you, but you don't really even know what they're coding. And so maybe my situation was unique because I was thrown in the complete deep end, but it was really challenging because I didn't understand in the beginning that they don't have to listen to me. And some of them are, they're really strong-headed and they're really smart and they know what's best sometimes technologically. So being able to have those discussions with them was really challenging for me. So I think the way that I got around that was just building relationships with them. So I was generally super interested in technology. I didn't know anything, so I was willing to learn whatever they kind of told me to look into. I immediately researched, and I wanted to kind of build up my knowledge as quickly as possible. And I really gave them the time of day. So I would sit in, whiteboarding sessions with them. I would ask them questions. I remember when I first started, I pretty much sat with every senior engineer and just kind of had them tell me what they thought about the product, what they thought was wrong with it, what was annoying about the technology, what they were proud of, what they wanted to build, but they didn't get to, just kind of getting their side of things, because they live in their world and, it's a very different world than I live in as a product manager, but they can contribute a lot. And I think if you give them the time of day, they'll oftentimes do everything for you. So I basically just really tried to understand where they were coming from every time they had a concern. And over time, you kind of start, I don't know if this is like the right way to do it, but you kind of start just kind of bargaining with them. So, you'll be like, if you do this for me, like, I'll let you do this. And it's really kind of this, interesting relationship where you're helping each other out. You're not ordering them around, right? The other thing that was really challenging was just understanding estimates. Because in the beginning, I thought, okay, it's a 2-week estimate. It'll be done in 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, they're just like, no, I don't know I have the code, but I don't know where to put it. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, type it in. Like, what do you mean? But they're just like, no, I need to understand like where to execute it. And so the more I sat with them and understood what the challenges are with technology, the more I understood like this stuff is really tough and they're under a lot of pressure and, they're very stressed because they have to deliver. and the product manager doesn't even understand why they're struggling, right? So the more you can enter their world, the easier it will be for everyone. And software engineers are the most creative. They problem solve all day long. So if you want a problem solved, go to your engineer and you'll be able to work out a great solution. So having a great relationship with them was the most important lesson that I learned as a product manager.
Awesome. Alex, you mentioned a lot about protecting your time. Anything to add on that in terms of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, for sure. I would say organizational skills. That's you. The product manager is the person who's supposed to be organizing everybody, even though technically the project manager has sort of was traditionally known as someone who literally organizes a project, and a program manager in some companies does that same function. But the product manager should be organized because the product manager is supposed to know what's happening with all these threads that are not just about executing a particular product, but about where are we in a particular stage of development? Where are we in thinking about a strategy of this? Where are we in talking to this other department about this other thing that they're building, or these 10 other research projects that they're working on, and who owes you what document, and which document do you owe to who and when? And honestly, I'm still pretty terrible at that part, like still to this day. And that honestly, especially in big tech, like if you've got the organizational stuff down, you're going to be such a success. Like I would say, besides communication, which probably is the number one skill to have, just being able to talk to people, different people, understand their problem, be empathic, all this stuff, I would make my number 2 pick organization.
Awesome. Cleo or Derek, anything to add to that? I guess we can start with Derek.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I was just going to follow up because it's a great point that Alex is raising. Manage your time and organization. So one thing that's really important is you have to product manage yourself. And that means you have to focus on what's most important, because you're going to get so much busy work thrown at you. And if you get sucked into that world and you don't make time to look up ahead and that strategy, that big picture thinking, and focus on what's important, that's on you, which means that you'll become relegated to a corner. You have to make sure you make that time. And it's just really important. So the other part, I guess, when I look at the hardest thing that I deal with, no matter which level I'm at an organization, is I'll call it reality. And that is that bringing people to understand what's real and what's achievable and what we can actually focus on and what we can't. Because you're always going to have so many more demands hitting you, and people saying, but just end this, end this, end this. And it's not that, it's or this. And it's changing those expectations, because simple equation, I like to always say, is happiness is reality minus expectations. And all suffering comes from resisting reality. So it's bringing them back, because no matter where you're at, what level you're at, you're going to face those challenges.
Awesome. Cleo?
Yeah, I can go next. So I would say I would definitely echo everything that was already mentioned. But I guess I can bring an additional perspective as a product manager so I've been at Microsoft for 1 year now. So I joined my job fresh out of college. So I think that came with some challenges where I definitely faced some imposter syndrome right off the bat when I first started my job, because, I was working with people who were 20, 30 years into the industry. I had a ton of experience. I was expected to prioritize things for engineers that had been at Microsoft for decades, working with business people who had so much knowledge on the industry. And so, to be completely honest, I felt very underqualified to be making decisions for the organization. And I remember struggling with that quite a bit, especially because as a PM, you're supposed to be the one that knows everything about the product and is able to make that decision and can lead. And so that was definitely a challenge at the beginning, but I combated that by really focusing my energy to become a subject matter expert in the area I was working in. Again, I knew that I wasn't going to have the same years of experience as many of my coworkers, but where I could, that advantage was to really dive in on the problem space and understand every part of the problem by talking to people, by, you know, going that extra mile to really, really understand what the pain points were and understand the customer voice and really become that expert in my product and solution area. And so 1 year in, I'm definitely still learning a ton, and, you know, I'm definitely still going to continue to learn, but I was able to get a lot more confidence in leading and making decisions and influencing people by having the confidence in my knowledge and the expertise that I'm trying to build.
Awesome. As we're talking more and more about these challenges, I'm recognizing like key aspects of a PM. And I know that like when I started looking into being a PM, there was a lot that encompasses being a PM. Like you got to know how to work cross-functionally, lead without influence. A lot of the other things that were mentioned earlier, like organization skills. So I was wondering from each of our speakers, what do you think are core? What do you think are core attributes that a PM should have? And as students, just to bring this back down to a student perspective, like what advice or tips would you have for those listening right now on how to obtain these attributes? And let's start off with Alex this time, just to switch things up.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we're always waiting for you to just pick somebody. Pick somebody. So I already started out, I kind of said communication is the number one. I'm going to still go with that one. I also do have a video on the subject. I have a video on all these subjects. So after this, make sure you check them out. Also, I want to use the opportunity to shout out to Edmund Chan, who I see. I was scrolling, who's, you know, the folks that are out here. And Edmund, what's up, Edmund? So good to see you, my friend. Edmund came to, I do these Saturday mornings resume reviews for product managers that want to get in or get into the industry or just have me look at their resumes. And Edmund was just so tenacious. I couldn't hear him the entire time because we had technical difficulties, and he ended up just writing notes to me and just showing me what's happening. And like, we were able to still review his resume. So Edmund, good to see you. And anyone else who wants to stop by and say hello on Saturday mornings, 8 o'clock in the morning, please, you know, use the links that I think were dropped in the chat and sign up. I would love to chat with you because I think this is the group that might need that help. That's the end of my commercial segment, but I think you will enjoy that and you will find that helpful. So back to what I think are important qualities. I think communication, number one, I said that. Number two, organization. I'm going to stick with that as well. Organization. If you know what's happening, not only you can keep other people organized, because everybody else, they'll forget the stuff that you're doing or the stuff that they owe you or they owe somebody else. But if you just constantly gently pinging everybody, and you're the person who actually knows what's going on, people are gonna start to actually come to you, and they're gonna just see you as a source of, non-ambiguity in a very ambiguous world. Like everything around is just extremely ambiguous. And so if you can give them a little bit of comfort, they're gonna come to you. Another thing I think is important is prioritization. And again, I alluded to this earlier, but this is super important. Like, you've got to be able to say no to stuff. You've got to be able to find out the stuff that's actually going to move the needle. And you got to deliver it in such a way that people feel heard, but at the same time, they get buy-in on like the overall goals, or the organizational goals, or whatever it may be. So I think those things are extremely important. I think you should know some aspects of tech. I totally get it that we don't all come from tech background. That's totally fine. But you could educate yourself slowly. You don't need how to code. Again, more in the like the tech, the big tech companies. Startups, you're gonna need to do everything. Those are going to be my top ones. Like, there's plenty more, but I think those are the ones that I focus on. I'd love to hear what everybody else, especially Derek, would think, coming from like a high position where there's a lot of folks working for you. Derek, would love to hear what you think on this one.
Yeah, I'm next. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, the skills really come down to it. So I guess when I look at it, maybe I'll frame it a little bit different. So what skills do you need to be hired? Like something like that, like for your product management position, how I consider the framework that I would usually use. Like the very first one you're going to start with is motivation. Like, do you have the passion for it? This is anything, no matter what you always hire for, passion's first. The second one is company culture fit. Typical things, generic, no matter what industry you're in. Getting into the soft skills next, though. So the soft skills is where you're really looking for that grit. And this is actually in numerous different books, because grit is something that you're going to have to face. You're going to face so many different challenges, so many different pressures. You got to be able to go through it and build that sense of ownership when you do it. So a big part of product management to succeed as a product manager is that person has to have a skill to have that sense of ownership. It's not just that you're doing the job, you own this job, you own this product, it's responsible for it. And then I look at it that a big part that I weigh is curiosity. So if you're not curious, you're not going to look at alternatives. You're not going to think different. And then I want the rigor to be able to do the analysis, the data-driven, the validation to go follow through with all those things. And of course, the softer skills, I call them softer soft skills, which is, are you a lifelong learner? Do you have that humility? Are you going to play well with others? These are all important things. And looking from that, once I do have the soft skills identified people, then I look at the product management expertise of them if they're more senior in the field. And then beyond that, I look at domain. And I do it in that order. So domain being, what's the expertise if it's a banking, software, marketing, whatever you're in. The reason why I do it in that order, a lot of people do it in reverse. They do domain first. I do it in this order because soft skills are hard to train. Domain is easy to train. So if you don't have that foundation, that passion, that fit, that soft skills, then the domain doesn't matter. But the domain knowledge can come. So that's my overall summary.
Awesome. And I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on tips or advice for what students can do now in order to obtain these skills. I know, Derek, like you put a lot of emphasis on soft skills. So what would be your recommendation?
Do things like you're doing right now.
Yeah.
The fact that you're taking the initiative to create this group is impressive, right? This is what you want to do. You want to get out there. You want to try this. You're learning from this. Keep doing things like that. Just go ahead and try. Whenever somebody asks me how to get into product management, I just say take the initiative and start doing it. Because usually people come from different backgrounds, and something like Alex, other people mentioned here, is if you're a developer, you're a designer, and want to get into product management, just start thinking bigger picture and start taking on some tasks. You know what? Usually the people who are in charge of it are very happy for the help, and then you move in. I've been around long enough, and I was mentioning early on, I think during the beginning of this thing, that product management wasn't really a thing when I was in school. I remember just starting this thing and looking around one day what I was doing and said, what do I do? And I looked up the internet, it's like, project management, product management, BA. Like it's sort of a mismatch of things. I was like, what is this product management thing? And the whole idea is that how did I get into it? As I was a developer before, and I just started doing bigger picture thinking. I said, so why are we doing this? What is that? Who actually wants this? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that actually instead? So all these different things will drive you in those directions. You don't need to start just with an associate PM. You can start in any field and transfer in.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And just to kind of like make that more concrete, I think clubs, student teams, like those are just two examples that I think you'd learn a ton from for audience that's listening. In terms of what Alex said for prioritization, organization, and some of the other key aspects that were mentioned, like I'm curious as to what you have to say for students out there.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to comment on this one a little bit? That's an excellent question. Like I actually don't know off the bat. I know from my experience, like I've always been less than organized, but always striving to get better at it. So there's plenty of frameworks that you can learn, plenty of books on the subject. I would just say actually invest into it and keep trying, and don't be disillusioned if it takes a long time. Just in general, I think you also just kind of on top of what Derek said, I would say that in terms of being a lifelong learner, you should just be ready for a marathon in general, and that should be your approach. I watched a video just a few days ago about the CEO of now I forget the word, forget the company. What's the company that allows different creators to get paid every month? Help me out.
Upwork?
Patreon. Thank you so much. Yes, because patrons. Yes, thank you so much. So the founder of Patreon was saying that everybody always sees just the successes, right? But he actually wanted to make a video and tell about his failures, of which there were so many. And the way that I spoiled the video for you, but the takeaway is that you have to treat your life as this upward trajectory that sometimes can be up and down, but you're zooming out on it. So you're taking the long-term view. So basically anything you're trying to learn for, you sort of taking yourself out of the immediate result, and you're aiming for the long-term, for the marathon. And you know that in the end, if you keep putting the work in, keep getting better at this, and just like Derek said, just use the muscles, just build stuff. If you want to get better prioritizing, just prioritize the important stuff. Keep doing it for yourself, right? Like you are your own product.
Very well said.
Yeah, so keep doing that. Take the long view. It's of course it's easier said than done, but I love that video. I recommend you check it out. Also, it was just so good to hear something like that, because nobody sees the misses. Nobody sees these so many attempts. It could be 999 times out of 1,000, and it doesn't even matter. You make yourself outcome independent. It's all about the effort.
Just to add to that one more, I know Lena, you can there a second. The whole idea is that life's uncertain. Just embrace the uncertainty. Failure is happening. Embrace the failure, and don't take things so seriously. Because the end of the day, people said, I think one lucky break to get into product management. Another equation I like is, what is luck? Luck is just opportunity meeting preparation. That's that marathon Alex talked about. So just keep running, and you'll get there. An opportunity will come by.
I'm just going to add one thing in terms of what you can start doing today to try and build some of those skills. So one of the most important things of being a product manager is, you have to really like people. You have to like talking to people, and you have to like hearing about people's problems. If you don't really like talking to customers, like there's some people that, find customers really annoying, and they're these people that just call on the phone and complain. I've been there. I used to be in customer service. It's easy to kind of get that view of customers, but try and see them as something that, people that you can talk to essentially solve problems for. So, start talking to people. If you're at a restaurant, you see one of the patrons struggling with something, ask them, why do you do that? How's that process? How's that working for you? Like, what could be better? And just get in the habit of kind of asking people about how they're doing business, how they're solving problems and what's wrong, and focus on kind of like their characteristics. Who are they? What's their role? What are their motivations? Why do they care about this? And why don't they care about the other thing? The reason I'm bringing this up is because if you're a student, it's so easy to reach out to people and get them to talk to you. When I'm doing entrepreneurial stuff and I reach out to people on LinkedIn, they just assume I'm going to sell them stuff. They don't want to talk to me. They don't believe when I say I just want to hear about something. So if you're still a student and you want to kind of practice those skills, you have such a huge advantage because of your current profile. So, don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them about, what they're doing today, how it can be made better. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I actually just want to add on to that as well, because Lena touched on a point that I think is really important. And I think one of the most important skills for a PM to have is empathy, because first of all, when you're building a product, you need to understand who you're building it for. And in order to do that, you have to deeply understand your customer. And like Lena mentioned, you have to understand, well, what are their problems? Like, what are they facing? Why would they need your product? And if you don't have a deep understanding of that, it's really hard to build something that's actually going to be successful. And then another layer of that is the fact, because as a PM, you're going to be interacting with so many different kinds of people to get to the success of a product, whether it's your engineering team, whether it's your business, customers, so many different kinds of people. And you have to be able to understand that everyone has such different motivations and perspectives. And because, again, you are like that glue between so many different kinds of people, it's really important that you can understand why somebody might be saying a certain thing or why they might have a certain perspective, in order to bring people together and, bring everyone towards that shared outcome.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just want to echo what Lena said. I think something I keep in mind a lot, and this was from just talking to other people, is like as a student, a lot more doors are open to us just because we are students. We are from UBC. So I think that, that's just a really good reminder for everyone in our audience. Cool. So I think we'll switch to the Slido questions now, and then we'll leave a couple minutes at the end just for Zoom Q&A with our audience. So the first one that we have here is, do you think it's advantageous to go into a developer, or I guess more technical role first, and then go to a PM? And I think this is, I think Cleo would be really good at answering this, because I know she went kind of like the software PM route.
Yeah, definitely. I can go ahead. So I guess to give a little context on how I got to product management, I studied computer science, and then I did a couple internships as a software engineer. And I actually did not discover the field of PM until much later in my degree. So I really wish it was something I discovered earlier, because I could have, just learned about it so much earlier on. But I definitely think it was worthwhile to get that technical grounding first before I went into product management, because once you actually get into the role, having the technical background allows you to just be able to speak the same language as your engineers. So, you have that technical grounding, you can speak that same language with them, and you can empathize with them a lot more because you understand what it's like to be a developer too. And so I don't think it's absolutely critical to have a technical background. Again, there are many PMs who don't have one, but I think if you're already studying computer science, I think it's absolutely beneficial to have that background to start with.
I wanted to jump in here to follow up actually. Cleo, so I wanted to get your thoughts. What is too much, or like what amount of experience is enough to develop that technical background? Is it just, a couple of internships in university, or do we have to is it more beneficial to work as an engineer for 2 years, 3 years? I know this is something that's come into my mind as well, and I'm sure it's come into a lot of people's minds. So curious to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it's really interesting because this is actually something I agonized a lot about when I was deciding what kind of job to take after graduating, because I was essentially deciding whether I wanted to continue on the path of being a software engineer for a few more years and then going to PM, or go straight to PM after grad. And I had the exact same concern about, if I go into PM now, will I lose out on the technical side? Is it too early, too late? I definitely had a lot of those thoughts. I would say that there's no one set path on how to do it. I've seen plenty of people who've gone into product management without any technical background. I've seen some who have been an engineer for 10 plus years and decide to go into it. And I think what I find is the beauty of PM is that there's not one set way to do it. People come into it with so many different backgrounds. Again, being technical is just one different flavor, I guess, you can have of the role. And so some people will have more of an emphasis on the technical side, but some people who have a different background might have more emphasis on design or business or whatever other discipline they come from. And I think that just makes for a more rich role. So I guess to answer your question, I don't personally think that there's a standard, amount of technical background you necessarily need to have to be successful. I think everyone can come into the role with a different kind of strength, and being technical is just one of them.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've heard this a lot from a lot of people have asked about this. And I think it really depends on, your passion for the role. If you're really passionate about product, I would say, maybe go for it and see what happens. What's the worst thing you can do? Maybe do an internship before if you have that opportunity and luxury. But yeah, thank you so much for that perspective.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I want to add one more thing to that. So one thing that I was really concerned about when making that decision to switch from SWE to PM, I had it set in my mind that if I had made the decision to switch to PM, that was the be all end all, I could never go back. And I think one thing that I wish I could tell my younger self was that, whatever decision you make going fresh out of college is not going to be your set path for life. And this is something that I learned since starting at Microsoft, that you can switch roles if you want to. Part of starting your first job out of college is just discovering what you actually enjoy. And if you try being a PM for a bit and decide that you actually want to go back to SWE, people will totally encourage that. And vice versa. If you're a SWE and want to become a PM, people will help you make that happen. So I would say, don't stress too much about what that first job is. I think it's more about finding the field that you want to be in. And if there's a path that you really want to go towards, you can carve your way to the next step, regardless of what your current position is.
Awesome. I know Derek has to leave soon, so I'm going to jump to the next question because I think he is really well suited to kind of answer that with his vast array of PM experiences so far. So the next question is, what sets a good PM resume apart, and how can someone with no PM experience make a strong resume? And I wanted to ask Derek this because you put a lot of emphasis on soft skills, because you mentioned that's what you look for, but that's not the most easiest thing to put on a resume.
Well, tell me, I can look at it as similar to the product or anything in business. The answer is always, if you say something, make sure you answer it in the way in the resume that answers the part that says, so what? So if you put something on there saying, I did this, tell me the so what. When you were looking at things, you guys might be familiar with the STAR interview question: situation, task, action, result. And that's kind of a so what. So you put something down, I did this, and this was the outcome by this, right? If I can see that, I know that you understand it. There's another saying that never hire someone that does great work but can't explain why, because they might have just lucked out, right? If they explain why, then it's good. So when you're looking at things, now I've actually done this before with like resume startups and different things back in the day, and I've done mock interviews, doing some market research with people. And one guy came in and he was doing a mock interview for a mechanical engineer position. And he had an English teaching position before in Taiwan briefly, he liked surfing. And he didn't mention any of those in the interview. And I asked him, why not? He says, not applicable. All he focused on is education. And I said, tell me how they are. And I actually walked it through with him and said, surfing requires organization, time management, so forth, tidal things coming in and things. How did you do that? Requires a sense of adventure. You want to explore, you've gone to Taiwan, so you've got some curiosity. Tell me how that's important in engineering. So whenever you have something, bring it back to the so what, and you'll do pretty well with it. Because when I look for a resume, one thing I'm looking for is diversity. If you've got diverse experiences, that's what we want, because PMs are generalists. So I want someone who can think different ways and has different mindsets.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to add on to that? And I think Derek, just let us know if you have to.
I will disappear in a poof of smoke, right? Puff of smoke effect.
Awesome.
I will bow out now gracefully. Thank you all. You're in good hands for the rest of the session. And thank you all for organizing it.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Derek.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Awesome. I guess I can pick on Alex again.
Sure, but you're going to have to ask the question again.
Okay. What makes a good resume stand apart? Like what, and how can someone with no previous PM experience make a strong resume, something that stands out?
Yeah. Yep. So I would break that into two tracks. Track number one is obviously make your resume as good as it could possibly be, given your experience, given the stuff that you've done, and just like Derek said, the diverse experiences that you've had. But number two is if you go through everything and you cannot identify enough content in there for it to be a successful PM resume, then taking the long view, you need to think about what is it that's missing. And we can quickly touch upon like what makes a good PM resume from my perspective. Of course, as you guessed that I do have videos on the subject as well. But after that, you actually make a plan. Okay, now how do I build that stuff? So let's take an example. I think it's great for a PM to, first of all, be a product manager somewhere. I think that's great. How do you do that? Well, if you're in school, internships or joining startups or just doing your own thing, whatever you can do that will allow you to say, I built this thing, maybe it was only used by me and my neighbor, that, that's secondary. Like I built a thing, I thought about it, I thought it was going to be useful. Maybe it was useful. Here's what I learned. Maybe it's still going on. So I think maybe I joined another startup. Maybe I started a product management group that was actually hugely beneficial to folks that have learned how to network. They've picked up these skills, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something. That's what a product manager does. They execute. Then the second thing is, educational background. Do you know the skills that a product manager could pick up in school, such as like the tech, mathematics, analytics, finance, business, like those aspects I think are handy for a product manager. And then the skills that you're trying to demonstrate beyond that are leadership, execution, strategy, grit, again, like Derek mentioned. And then if they're missing from your resume, you just cannot think of a way to actually demonstrate, to tell that story. You need to create a path and make a plan. How are you going to put it on your resume in the next month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months? And if you're still in school, you've got plenty of time. If you're out of school, that's okay. Just also jumping in on what Cleo said, doesn't matter that you might go and work at a position that is not ideal for you initially. That's okay. Again, you're taking a long-term view and you are building kind of the future and the path where you want to go. So build out that resume and ideally take your next job or next opportunity with the eye on your eventual plan. Hopefully you're working towards something that can bring you happiness and bring you joy. If you think that could be in a particular company or a particular style of organization or particular, field or industry, then go for that. So make a plan and then try to work on basically improving your resume slowly as you go with each new position, each new role you take on.
Awesome. Cleo or Lena, anything else to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that's a really important point to make. So when I interviewed the 20 product managers for my book, what I found was that a lot of them actually played the long game because, you know, if you don't have the experience, sometimes it's really challenging, especially if there's kind of a lot of things missing in your experience that are needed for these job descriptions that you're looking at for product managers. So, you know, it really is a long game and you have to kind of have the patience. And I think if you truly want that and if you're truly meant for it, you will wait and you will kind of take the opportunities that come before that. So one of the kind of patterns that I saw among all the people that I interviewed that got into product management from a variety of different fields, different educational backgrounds, different companies, like the whole variety, they really exploited even the smallest of opportunities. So one girl, for example, she started in marketing. She got laid off because it was a startup. And then she got basically recruited to be a product marketer. She didn't really want to be a product marketer, but she kind of took the opportunity. And then in the company, she realized she wanted to be a product manager. There was no product manager there yet. And so she basically over time got involved directly in the company doing the job of a product manager. And then after a year, she basically talked to her boss and, you know, asked, can you backfill my product marketer position and turn me into a product manager? So it's all about, you know, really find the smallest of opportunities that are going to inch you closer to that goal. Don't lose sight of the light at the end of the tunnel because it will be there, but be patient. And I think really the most important thing with that is through that journey, maybe you figure out that you don't want to be a product manager. Maybe you go into product marketing or UX and you realize that that's what you really love. Product management isn't the end all be all. Like there's a lot of other different kind of roles around product management where you still get to interact with product, and maybe you get into product 4 years later than you thought you would, right? So keep it really flexible. And I think that's what I wish I would have told my younger self as well. It's just kind of be flexible. Don't worry too much if the next opportunity is not, you know, the best job on earth, it's not your dream job. As long as it's taking you closer to your goal, you're learning more and more, you're getting closer to what you want to do, which is perhaps product management. Maybe you're working with product managers. Just kind of trust the process. Don't be impatient. You have your whole life. I've been working since 2013, and I thought, you know, my career was in trouble in 2015, but it was only beginning. So really, really have a lot of patience because there's a whole ton of working for your whole life until retirement. So no worries. There's going to be tons of opportunities.
Awesome. Cleo, anything else to add on to that?
Yeah, so I guess I can add, I guess from the perspective of, so I was a comp sci student and like all of my experience was as an engineer. And so, you know, it's kind of how you get from being a software engineer to a PM without having actual experience as a PM. One thing that I found really helped on my resume. So my first internship was kind of the stereotypical software engineering co-op role. It was at a company called Vizier, where I was, you know, working on a sprint team, building, you know, on the team, as you know, regular software engineer does. And then my next internship was actually more of an innovation-based internship. So it was called RBC Amplify, where basically it was kind of like a 4-month hackathon. It was kind of like Microsoft Garage, if anyone's heard of that, but it's essentially where you're on a team of interns, and rather than contributing to an existing kind of full-time team, you're actually working as your own unit and like building a product from scratch. And so that was a really cool internship where my position was still developer, but I actually got to take part in that whole process of designing a product, talking to customers, and kind of doing that whole end-to-end building of a product. And so opportunities like that, I think, really helped me bridge that gap between being a SWE and then moving into the product management space. And I noticed that was something that I got asked a lot about, like even in my interviews. But aside from things like that, I think projects always also go a very long way. You know, if you have personal projects or like hackathon projects or things where you're working with other people or a team, I think if you can have those kinds of projects on your resume and then also really be able to speak to them from the mindset of a product manager, so you're able to talk to, you know, when you're able to speak to your project with an understanding of why that project matters, you know, why you built it and what the impact it has, I think you can really kind of carve that bridge between being a software engineer to going into product management.
Cool. And this is more of like a specific question for you because I know you're a recent graduate from UBC. Like, out of those experiences that you mentioned, what would you attribute the most to your success in transitioning to that PM role?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just based on like how my interviews went and how like, you know, the things that I noticed stood out most about my resume, I honestly think it was that more innovation-based internship that really helped kind of separate my resume from like the typical software engineering internships. So I definitely recommend, again, seeking out things like that. That internship was actually very eye-opening for me because so it was at RBC, which is a bank. And so it was very, you know, working in the financial space, working in like the more business focused space was very interesting. And it kind of gave me a taste of what working on the business side was like as well. And that was something I didn't really get in my more previous software engineering internship. So I think finding experiences like that, where you get opportunity to kind of be in this more interdisciplinary space, even if you are, you know, even if you have a certain title, you get to see other aspects of the business. I think that can always help as well.
Cool. That sounds great. I'll go to the next question on Slido here. So how do you practice influencing without authority? And I think this goes back to the things that Lena said earlier. So I guess we can start off this with her.
Got myself up there. Practice influencing. That's a really tough one. Yeah. I think probably trying to persuade people of things in daily life, especially partners or family members, because they also don't have to listen to you. Try to kind of find, Alex is laughing here, he probably knows how it feels. Just try to kind of suggest what people should do without ordering them around. I'm a bit of an impatient person, so this is kind of a personality thing that I've been working on as well. It's like, you know, the power of suggestion. Like when my partner doesn't do certain things in the house, you know, instead of just yelling at them, let's try to persuade them with influence. Like, you know, I love it when you do the dishes, or these are really kind of stupid examples, but you can do that in kind of daily life to just try and get into that habit, essentially. Or maybe you had a really frustrating incident with the bank and now you have to call them and, you know, they don't have to satisfy you and your problem. Maybe try and find ways to influence them to give you what you need without forcing them to. So that's kind of the best that I have here. Does anyone else, maybe Alex, has some insights here on how to practice
Sure.
it?
No, I think that's a great start. That's awesome. That's awesome advice. I take that right away. I would say, again, break it down into two paths. The first path being exactly that. You're basically analyzing. You're not even analyzing your life. You're just going about your day-to-day life, which, since you're here, is filled with lots of different stuff. You're going to college, you're building your own thing, you're trying to update your resume, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, maybe do a side hustle, a business, whatever. And in those environments, you're going to get those situations where you're effectively, you've got other people or groups of people that have certain goals and you've got certain goals. And your job is to figure out a way where your goals align. And that's kind of how you end up doing it in almost all situations. If you really break it down, that's what it's going to be. Like if you figure out a way to have your goals aligned with a person on the other side of the phone that can give you back the $20 fee for your bank charge or whatever, then you can actually make that happen. A lot of times that will, you know, you can use certain, you know, obviously aspects of like negotiation, all this, but basically, I think start with empathy and think about, try to see from the other person or group of people point of view, and try to think about how you can just align your goals. Or when it comes to product management, it's going to be align your organization's goals, your company's goals, your investors' goals, like whatever it is, you're going to be doing the same exact thing. So just practice, use that muscle. And the second thing I would say is, hopefully you're already doing this, you read books. You know, there's like Crucial Conversations. That's a popular one last few years. That's a pretty eye-opening book. Read other books on psychology, sociology. Just kind of stay. By the way, the other thing is when you read, it's one thing to read it, then share what you learned with others, and then you're going to really learn it. Because as you read, that's one way, but then when you teach, you're going to actually learn it a lot more. So I would say that just like as a secondary, you should always be reading, be like Bill Gates. That guy reads like a book a week for the last 50 years or something like that. Just maybe strive for that. I wasn't able to do that myself, but like, I think that's the way to do it.
Cleo, I think you unmuted yourself. Do you have something to add to that?
Oh, I actually didn't realize I had. No, honestly, I think it was super well said. I would absolutely echo what both Lena and Alex said. I was going to mention myself also the empathy aspect. I think when you're trying to lead, usually it ends up being, you'll often be in a situation where you have a certain goal that might be in conflict with other people's, and you're just trying to figure out how you can influence those people to do what you want to do. And I think often we can get really stuck in trying to figure out like how we're going to achieve our own goal. But I think a really great practice is to take a step back and really understand, okay, well, here's my goal, but where does that fit in respect to what the other people are coming from? And so trying to understand that way that you can get all of your goals to align and, as Alex mentioned, to carve it in a way that you can all work together towards something that's shared.
Yeah, I also really liked Lena's answer. I think that's the first time I've heard that answer. It's very practical and it's something that you can start applying right away to your life. Awesome. I think I'm gonna go to, I think we're gonna switch to just Q&A just from the general audience. So if anyone has a question that they'd want to just speak out loud, again, I encourage you to turn your cameras on to do so. We can use the raise hand functions just to avoid some of the chaos with people who might want to speak at the same time. So if you have a question you'd want to ask to our speakers, now is the time to do so. And if not, we can just continue on with the Slido questions. So I'll just give our participants a couple, or our audience, I guess I should say, a couple seconds to do so.
Sorry, I have a question for Lena.
Go for it.
Thank you. Lena, you mentioned about the story about the girl transit from product marketer to product manager, and then it's an easy transition, or like are there any differences of both areas?
Great question. Yeah. So I was going to kind of mention this when we were talking about, switching from developer to PM and what the advantages are. So there's certainly, a huge advantage if, you have been a software developer, you understand software developers, and you can kind of understand technology, you can have those conversations. I do think, so the Cleo kind of talked about this, there's so many facets to product management that there's always going to be something that, you're really good at and other things that you're not good at, which are kind of like your blind spots. So I think it's a lot about being aware of what your blind spots are. So if you are a marketer, the huge advantage is that you're really, really close to the customer. So you understand, what the customer needs. You're used to talking to customers, but most importantly, you're used to basically articulating the benefit of a product to the customer. And that's a really difficult skill. Like I'm still, getting to grips with that. It's kind of called positioning. So product positioning, and really often what you do is you basically want to listen to what the customer says and then kind of play the product back in their words, because that's the context that resonates with them, right? So that's kind of the huge advantage. And the offshoot of that, which was really interesting. So it's the story is Sarah's story. So she's actually in one of the individuals in my book, obviously. So she was saying that because she knew how to articulate the benefit of the product to the customer as a marketer, when she became a product manager, she could then articulate her ideas really well to stakeholders. So it wasn't just how the product is going to benefit a customer, but also how her ideas for the product are going to benefit the stakeholders' goals. How are they going to benefit the engineers' goals? So you're essentially not just a communicator, but you know how to communicate ideas in an easy to digest way for customers. So I think that's kind of the biggest advantage of coming from a marketing background, that you just really, you think about the customer, you understand what the kind of typical motivations of a customer are and how to communicate that to the customer. And then later you can then convey your ideas within the organization super effectively.
Thank you. That's very well answered.
Okay.
Awesome. We can go to Angela next and then Jeremy.
Hi, yeah, so thank you so much for this panel. I actually didn't know too much about product management coming in, and I think I learned a lot from this. I actually did do a bit of producer work before, so the more that I hear about this, the more that I'm starting to think that it might be kind of similar. So I'm just kind of wondering, in general, is there a difference between product management and producer work? And let's say apply that specifically to the games industry, because I think it was Alex who mentioned, mobile and stuff a little bit. So how would product management in the games industry differ from a producer role?
Yeah, I'll take that one because I definitely used to be a producer. So hopefully that answers your question right there. It's very similar. It is very similar. And also, like, producer is what a product manager is sometimes known as in video games or in movies. Because at the end of the day, it's like, well, the producer's responsible for making sure everything gets done. Sometimes the producer is like executive producer, but everybody calls it different things. But the idea is, if you take that and then that person also provides the vision, or at least like the support for the vision, then that'll be a product manager. So like when I used to build games, I would first start out by like building a feature and then building a game and then building a studio that makes games. And during that time, it was sort of a producer role. But in the beginning, I had a lot of impact on what we actually build. And then later on, it was more like building the organization to make sure that it's successful, hiring the right people, which is very similar to what you do in product management also as you go up. And like Derek alluded to that as well. So I think for all intents and purposes, if you're a producer in gaming, you're basically a product manager.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Jeremy, you can go next.
Thanks. So my question is for anybody really, but it's, how do you maintain channels of communications if teams don't directly report to you? Are there any certain strategies or skills to achieve that? Or
Alex, do you want to start?
Well, I'm happy to finish that one off, like just give my POV, but you guys go ahead.
I think, so there's different types of kind of technology you can use to have people, update you. Maybe it's like Slack channels for marketing specific or tech support, or maybe you have, tools that amalgamate what tech support is hearing from customers. But I really do believe that you need FaceTime with people. So obviously virtual FaceTime is the same thing. We don't have a choice right now, but there's nothing that replaces really talking to someone who has talked to the customer, especially if it's about the customer. Because you can understand, you can pick up on subtle cues about, something that you wouldn't pick up in an email if they're just giving you a piece of information. But if they're telling you, you might be able to sense that there's issues. Maybe they're concerned about something, maybe they're frustrated, and that's where you really build relationships with the org. So I think setting up official channels like meetings, yeah, but I think it's really that one-on-one interaction. So what I used to do a lot is just kind of stop by someone's desk and just be like, how's it going? What are you working on right now? What's kind of something that you heard recently from a customer and another team member? Just kind of really get in the habit of like going around the office or virtually kind of chatting with people. I don't know how you do that virtually, but get that FaceTime with people so that you can get that internal information to really, build on top of the existing kind of infrastructure that you created, the technology that where you're maybe getting like some kind of tickets like to your email or something like that. That would be my 2 cents. Alex, you can go ahead.
I was just thinking that this kind of goes to the influence without authority piece, but also like the organizational piece. So how do you, I would say definitely one-on-ones. One-on-ones are hard to scale though when you go up and you're managing these just huge, hundreds of people are involved, and there's like so many different responsibilities, like the core ones are like engineering, product, and sales, but then you've got UXR, you've got design, you've got all the customer service and like the sales. Those are big organizations usually. And again, I start out talking about bigger companies, and so probably there's going to be some recurring meetings, which is the bane of anyone's calendar, the recurring meeting, like, oh, we've got a weekly. Oh no, there's a weekly. So there's going to be these like cross-functional weekly, or there's going to be like this team weekly, and you're going to have certain representatives. The main idea is that there's at least one representative for each core team that is present every week in some venue. And you, a lot of the times, the product manager, depending if you're the feature owner, the product owner, or a group or series of products owner, you will show up, or somebody on your team will show up, somebody that reports to you or somebody who works with you. And then the important thing there is hopefully you've got great program managers. I'm thinking of program managers in the Google sense of the word, but what I mean is like people who are a little bit more organizationally focused, and they're always making sure that we've got agendas for every meeting, and you send out those agendas, or better yet, you attach them right to the calendar. There's a link and it's easy to access, and we know everything that we're going to be talking about. So, and then you're in there basically making sure a day in advance, or okay, more realistically, 20 minutes in advance, but at least that 20 minutes in advance, you're looking to see that the agenda is correct and that you know what you're talking about, that everybody knows, okay, here's the latest update. And your job as the PM is to make it as efficient as possible, like those processes that we were talking about. You're trying to make sure that you have as few of those meetings as possible to move, but enough to move everything forward.
Thanks for detailed
explanation. I would definitely echo everything that was just said. And I think one thing I want to add, as somebody who started my job just a year ago and kind of like, fresh into the job out of college, one thing I really took advantage of was, again, like using one-on-one FaceTime to get to know people, whether it be on my team or stakeholders, just like making sure you take that initial step to have that one introduction and like at least have one instance of FaceTime when you first meet them. Even if every meeting you have since then is just, over a call or just emails, I think if you can even establish that first impression in person, one-to-one, I think that really goes a long way. And especially when you're new to a job, I think you can really flex that new hire card, and people will usually give you time of their day. So even if it's just a quick one-on-one to get to know what they do, I think building those relationships and spending time on nurturing that when you first start a job is really, really crucial.
Thank you.
Great answers. I think we have time for one more question. So, I think we have Edmund. All right, that last question is yours. Take it away.
Hey guys. So this is a pretty like general question. So I read in a book or an article maybe like a month or two ago, and it said that product managers like in the short run, say like 1 or 2 years, aren't like really necessary in a company, but within an extended period of time, like product managers are what like sets apart products or projects that succeed in the market and from those that don't. Do you guys agree with this? And like why or why not?
Do you mean, are you talking about like startups or like any company in general? I guess it would have to be a startup.
Yeah, I guess we could break it into like startups first. I guess it would be like a different answer maybe for like small companies and big companies.
I think for startups, like I'm not going to kind of go too deep into this, but I think for startups, it sometimes can depend on how product focused the founder and the CEO is, because if they're not really from like a product management background, they might hire a product person earlier on than other founders who are more kind of product centric, just to get that product eye on the product. I think it ultimately depends on the product manager though, because, there's sometimes you can hire a product manager and, maybe they're just not fit for the role or the company or the product. There's kind of just like there's founder product fit. There's also probably product manager product fit, where you either fit the product or you don't. So I think it ultimately kind of comes down to how well they've hired for the product manager. And if they're not certain that they can find the right fit, then maybe forgoing it for a bit is beneficial. Yeah, tough question. Good one though. Alex might be able to answer this one better.
Sure. No, I think that's also a great start. I would say that just taking the startup question, well, first, like taking it from the startup perspective, startups need, I heard this, I don't remember where it came out of, probably like one of the canonical, Y Combinator or something like that. But hacker, hustler, and designer is what you need for a startup. It's like the trio: the hacker, the hustler, and the designer. And the reason that is because you need one person who actually interacts with the technology to actually build the thing, and you need at least one of those. And the hustler is basically everything sales and marketing and business. And so the product manager with the startup is that role. I mean, certainly the product manager can be also the person who actually builds and develops if they can, and that's awesome. But usually it's just like this trifecta. The designer who kind of obviously thinks about the user, designs it for the user from the user's perspective, and actually gives the visual component that eventually end users will be interacting with. So from a startup perspective. You need those roles. The product manager does fit into it, but it's not necessarily critical. You could have somebody that is just great business background, not necessarily from a product manager perspective. Now in big business, I think it's going to be all about the product managers. And what I mean is big business is all about the next 20 years. We're always investing for the next thing. We're never, if you obviously Google, Facebook, Amazon, et cetera, it's all about future investment when you think about it. And the way we're going to be able to be successful in the future is if we're thinking about strategy, if we're thinking about what can we do, what does the market need, what does the user need, and we're always thinking about that, as opposed to engineers generally tend to focus on what cool stuff can we build. And sales generally is focused on what cool stuff can we sell or how much money can we make. So you basically need that person. That's why product managers are called, I think, kind of erroneously, the mini CEO. And I think erroneously because no one reports to them. But effectively, as you progressed with your career with the tech companies, the product manager does become the central figure that even though they don't have direct authority, let's listen to what the PM actually says. And the longer this goes on and the more ambiguity there is in the market, the more things don't make sense and we don't know what to do. That's just the reality. We don't know what to build and why we should build it. The more you're going to need those people in quantity and, of course, in quality. And just the final episode on that is at some point, Google fired all the product managers early on in Google's career. And then because apparently some of the I don't know, it was Larry or Sergey, they were fed up with it. You could read this in some of the Google books that are out there. And then they came back like a year later, or sometime later, they came back, with a vengeance, because basically you need them. And I think a lot of these companies are investing strongly into it. And it's going to be more and more competitive as we go, because things are only going to get more confusing. That's my thought on it.
Cool. Any last words, Cleo? If not, we can wrap up.
No, I think Lynn and Alex said it great.
Okay, awesome. Before I pass it off to Yen for our outro, I just want to thank all our speakers for coming. Definitely learned a couple of new things that I didn't know before. And I'd like to thank our audience too. I think we were at over 100 participants at one point. That's insane for a first event. So thank you all for coming out. I'll pass it off to Yen.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for great discussion, Alex, Lena, and Cleo. We hope that everyone discovered product management today and enjoyed it as much as we did, listening to the great stories from all of our speakers. So given that we just started out as a club in June this year, and this is our first event, we would really appreciate if all of you could take 2 to 3 minutes now and fill out any feedback you may have for us and our event today. Simply scan the barcode on the slide here, and keep in touch with us by joining our Slack channel. Click the like on our Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Thank you,
Awesome.
Everyone.
I'll also send the links in the chat too. And the feedback form is a great way to let us know what you want to see more of out of this club, because we are here to give you guys value and to bring a PM community to UBC. So be sure to fill that out. And yeah, thanks for coming out.
Thank you, guys. Just wanted to add on to that. Thanks everyone for joining in. Yeah, definitely I found today's event, I'm sure a lot of you guys learned a lot. Thank you, Alex, Lena, Derek, he's already left, and Cleo for giving your perspectives. I think I found it super valuable to learn from people's perspectives, and I hope everyone just did that. And in terms of, I would echo just joining our Slack, because what the questions we kind of got in the event, we're going to be building up our offerings based on these, so we can truly address what, you know, what things are bugging you. Maybe you want to read books and discuss with people, so we might start a book club. This is a little bit of a you know, hint of what's coming next. So thank you guys so much for joining. It's been super exciting and amazing to see the response, and, you know, being really passionate about the product space myself. I think this was something that was lacking on our campus, and I'm so glad that, you know, we've come together and you know, started this together. So like, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having us. Good seeing everyone.
Great job, guys. Super impressed. I wish I was doing cool stuff like that when I was at UBC. I was not. So you guys are great.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely would have joined this club if it was existed when I was at UBC.
Thank you, Cleo.
Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to talk. Thanks for our audience for coming out. I know it's really late. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.